Namaste. Welcome you all. NIOS welcomes you all in this educational video. Today we are going to do subject EVS. This is for senior secondary level. Code number for this subject is 333. Today we are going to do lesson number 4. Topic of this lesson is principles of ecology. We will discuss all the principles of ecology in this lesson. This is video's part 2. Now, let us know the objectives of this video. The first objective is we will be able to explain the basic idea of evolution and extinction. Another objective is we will be able to explain the concept of population with reference to organisms. The next objective of this lesson is we will be able to highlight the characteristics of size, growth, density, and dispersion of population. The next objective of this video is we will be able to analyze the demographic factors influencing the changes in population of any organism. In part 1, we covered few content. I hope you all have understood. You can always review that part 1 video. This video is in continuation of that part 1. In this slide, we are talking about evolution. The valid theory of evolution was propounded by two famous psychologists or scientists, or you can say researchers. Their names are Charles Darwin, and the second name is Alfred Wallace. In the year 1859, it was long time ago this theory was propounded. Both these gentlemen, they propounded this theory, and this theory has been extended in the light of progress in genetics, and it is known as Neo-Darwinism. According to this theory, organisms tend to produce more offspring that can be supported by the environment. So here we are talking about organism. So organism can be any organic life, whether it can be fish, tree, human. So any body which has life So this theory is important in itself. Organisms reproduce in large numbers that can be supported by nature. Natural selections selects among the variations, that is, the genes that automatically help the organism to adapt to a new environment. For example, you can see different images on the slide. The first images of the fishes. You can see the fishes are easily adapted to have a liquid home or liquid habitat. The second image is of camel. Camel is also adapted to have a habitat which has a very hot temperature or very high temperature. And the third image is of the bear. The bear, we all know that bear can live in cold temperature. So natural selection selects all these variations in these people, in these organisms. Such organisms get to grow up to adulthood and reproduce, which further pass on to their next generation. And all these adaptation also moves on to the next generation with a suitable adaptation to the next generation. The next point explains about the evolution which results in adaptation and diversity of the species. Now in this slide, we are talking about the survival in the world. We know the number of species surviving in the world today is the outcome of two main processes. The first is speciation. We will discuss in detail in further slides, and extinction. Here let us have a look, let us have a closer look in this slide. Now we can continue the lesson. You all have seen the slide with a closer view. Now let us understand this. On the top side of this image, you can see a population. Just for example, we can consider it as a population of fishes. So that first image is of a population, and the next horizontal image has two circles. Both these circles have isolated population. It happens because of certain climatic changes or due to some other natural reasons, and when further after a very long time, maybe 100 years or 200 years or more than 100 years, when after such a long time both the isolated populations samples they combine together, then now they are converted into two species, and these two species are now have different genetic structure as compared to their original species. So this process is known as speciation. And when after such a long time these two species has been formed, and now further they cannot interbreed further. It is a natural process. There are two examples which you will understand in this lesson. The first example is of the squirrel, and another example is of a bird. So when after a long time, when the barrier, which was natural barrier, if the barrier is removed, the population which are converted into one now, or you can say integrated into one population, they cannot interbreed and increase their population. So this whole process is speciation. It can happen in any organism, any species of organism. Here we are talking about one species, and the changes which take place in one species because of certain natural barriers. So this word is important for us to remember, speciation. Now here you can see another example. Here the example is of a bird. It is also a true and natural example. The process by which new species arise and evolution take place. It is a mechanism by which speciation is brought about. Here you can see the bird. Earlier it was on one group, and due to some certain natural reasons, the population converted into two different subgroups of population, and there was some natural barrier. And after a long time, because of climatic reasons or natural reason, they converted into two different species. A species comprises of many populations, and different populations often get isolated due to geographic barriers. For example, mountains, rivers, ocean, volcano, landslide, earthquake. It can be any geographical or natural barrier. Like normally we are on a place together in one population, but due to some natural disaster or some natural calamities or some geographical barriers, it can happen that few species can get isolated from their original population, or you can say a subgroup can get isolated due to some or any reason. And when that population, you can say subgroup of population continues in their growth, and after a certain time they convert into speciation, a new species. And when a population that was interbreeding otherwise gets separated into two completely isolated populations, which we just discussed recently due to any barrier, and because of the barrier which prevents their interbreeding, and consequentially the gene exchange occur. And after this gene exchange occurrence process, they cannot further interbreed. Now in this slide you can understand easily the ecological isolation caused by differences in temperature, humidity or pH, etc. in the environment of the two populations. Their temperature may vary, their atmosphere may be different. It will never be same at two places. So the place can be at any region on the earth. Here we are talking about the mutation which occurs randomly in the isolated population. And this isolation process and the mutation which occurs, it gives rise to a new variation within each subpopulation of these mutations. And slowly with passing time, those that help to adopt the environment, they are reproduced in greater number due to the natural selection process. Do you think that the environment at two geographical places are same? No. Since no two environments are identical, and the climate and the atmosphere is different at two places. Like the water would not be same, the temperature will not be same, the humidity will not be same, and the life of organisms which depend on all these resources will be different. So the natural selection pressure also operates in different way depending upon the local conditions such as climate and the diseases and the predators, etc. The natural selection affects each subspecies in different ways. So different variations get selected, and slowly those variations are established. With the passage of time, these subpopulations, they become very different from the original population. And slowly they get isolated, and after some time the next generation, they can no longer interbreed. And later we had already discussed in the image which we had seen with a closer view. In that image we can also easily see and understand that later, even when the barrier is removed, the subpopulations are still not able to interbreed and become two distinct species now. So this way few species can get extinct. Let us have a closer view of this image. We can continue. You have seen these two squirrels. These are two different species because of two different geographical locations. Their names are different, their geographical locations are different. The first squirrel is from North Rim, and the second image of the squirrel, she is from South Rim. We all know about the species. Now let us understand the speciation, which is known as species formation process. Let us understand this by example. You can see the image of squirrel. The example of formation of new species is two species of squirrel. The two species of squirrel were produced because of certain natural barriers. You can see the second image of the valley, which has two different sides, and in between you can see the gulf. So these two squirrels have their home on two different sides, and it is because of this natural barrier which you can see on screen. They both are from the opposite sides of the Grand Canyon. And both these squirrel population, they became separated about 1 million years ago due to the changed course of river Colorado. The original population was split by this river, and the environment on the two sides in very different atmosphere. So their food habit, the climatic condition, the hot temperature, water, everything was different. Now here we will talk about extinction process. Ever since life evolved on Earth, new species which are better suited or adapted to the environment have appeared and older and less successful organisms form have died or become extinct. And this extinction is generally a natural process. There are few animals which extinct. Here you can see the image of two extinct organisms. The first image is of a fossil fish, and the second image is of the fossil of the fern plant. So both have extinct now. The second image is of the fossil. We all know fossils are those products which were kept under the earth for a long time, and due to certain pressure they converted into fossil. Now let us understand how extinction occurs. When the species cannot evolve faster enough to cope with the changes which are taking place in the environment, then many species can extinct during the geological history of the earth. Many animals which were sometime on the earth have already extinct because of some or the other natural reasons. And fossils are the preserved remains of animals, plants, and other organisms that lived in the geographical past. Let us have a break here.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने
सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो,
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से
ज्ञान ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत,
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, स्वयं बने, हम
Now here you can see the image and the word written is population. We all know that population is defined as a group of freely interbreeding individuals of the same species present in a specific area at a given time. The species can be human, can be animal, can be bird, can be aquatic animal. So here, if we talk about population, that means we are talking in general. So this population group is a general group. A species has the characteristics that they have a similar habits or similar appearance or similar physical structure, and with passing time in natural environment they grow naturally. You may be thinking that the individual is either a male or a female, young or old. But a population has a sex ratio and the age structure, which means the ratio of male to female in the population and the various age groups into which the population may be divided. So there can be various groups which can be considered as age groups or different ratios of male to female and female to male. Now here we will be discussing the characteristics of population. All these characteristics are very important. So the characteristics of any population depends upon all these factors. The first factor is density of the population. The second factor is natality, or you can say the birth rate of the population. The third factor is mortality, which is known as death rate of the population. The fourth factor is the dispersal. Fifth factor is biotic potential. The sixth factor is the age distribution. For example, the younger group and the older group. The seventh factor is the dispersion group. There can be two groups, immigration and emigration. And the eighth factor is the growth form. The first factor of all these 7 factors which we just discussed is density. To understand this density, we must be aware about the area. A number of individuals per unit area at a given time is termed as a population density. So the area and the number of people is considered for understanding the density of any population. It varies from time to time and place to place. For example, more plants and insects can be seen during a particular season or during monsoons in the garden. So the reason is the weather and the time and the place. So density depends upon time and place. With changing time or changing weather, the density may increase or decrease. Density is measured by taking random samples from the measured area of a particular dimension. And we call it quadrate from that particular region. For example, we can take animals, quadrate, like tiger, lion, deer, etc. Any animal can be taken. The pug marks, these are the pug marks. So the pug marks are more useful to determine the actual numbers of all such animals, because each cat has a unique and different pug marks. So anyone can easily identify the foot marks or the pug marks of the cat are different, and the foot mark of tiger is different, foot mark of the lion is different. So accordingly, the density can be calculated. There are other methods also for counting the population. For counting human population, we call it census, and it is carried out every 10 years. Government plan counting of human population after every 10 years. You must have experienced people coming to your home and asking all the people's name, age, and whether they are physically fit or they are handicapped. So all these data is taken by the government during human population counting, which is known as census counting or census. They count each individual physically, and that counting is reported to the government office. This factor talks about the natality, or the other word for natality is birth rate. The rate at which new individuals are born and added to a population under given environmental conditions is called natality. Birth or hatching, we know hatching is the breaking of the egg, or when the baby comes out from the egg. And another word is germination, when there are sprouts which come out from the seed. And vegetative propagation. All these cause an increase in number of individuals in population. This third factor talks about the mortality, or we also call it as a death rate. When there is a loss of individual from a population due to death under a given condition is called mortality. And how do we calculate mortality? It is obtained by calculating the death rate in a population. Fourth factor talks about the dispersal. This refers to movement of individuals of a population of a region on a permanent basis, which is termed emigration. While there is another term, immigration, it refers to the movement of individual into a new area, where dispersal includes both emigration and immigration of the individuals. So emigration and immigration are two important ways of dispersal in any population. When it is out of a population, both these movements affect the population of a region. The population of a region is affected by dispersal. You can easily understand this by this image which is on screen. You see on the one side there is a word written mortality, and also having a negative sign, and on the left side you can see the word natality, which has also a negative sign. And on the up and down side of this density word, you can see two words, immigration and emigration. Both these have positive sign. So immigration and emigration. Immigration are those people, those group which move away, and emigration are the seasonal movement. Let us understand the active emigration is not possible in plants through seeds, because the seeds may be dispersed over long distance by wind, by water also, and also by animals. So this way active emigration is not possible. You can easily see the diagram and understand how the pollination take place and how they move from one place to another. It happens naturally because of wind, water, and animals. The density of any population basically depends upon 4 factors. The first one is natality, second is mortality, the third is immigration, fourth is emigration. Thus, the density of any population has all these factors, which you can see on screen also. The first factor is it has density, the second is it has natality, the third is it has immigration, and the next one is emigration. And the last factor is dispersal. All these factors are important, so we should all keep these points in mind. The movement of individuals of a population out of a region on a permanent basis is termed as emigration. And the immigration refers to the movement of individual into a new area where dispersal includes both emigration and immigration of individual. The population of a region is affected by the dispersal. The fifth factor is age distribution. The population may be broadly divided into 3 groups, and these 3 groups are: the first one is pre-reproductive group, the second is reproductive group, and the third is post-reproductive group. All these 3 names of the group, let us understand them together again. Let us understand them again. The first group is of pre-reproductive group. It comprises of the juvenile individuals or children's. The second group is reproductive group, which consists of individuals which are capable of reproduction. And third group is post-reproductive group, which contains aged individuals who are incapable of reproduction. Sixth factor is of the sex ratio. It is an important aspect of population. It refers to the ratio between female and male individuals in any population. Now here we can understand the population growth from 3 billion to 6 billion, and then from 6 billion to 9 billion. The population is growing. The growth of any population can be expressed in the form of mathematical expression which we call as growth curve. In general, we call it as a growth curve. You must have seen many graphs and different shapes of the graph. And if the number of organisms, they are plotted against time in the graph, then we get a curve which is called as the population growth curve. As we are talking about the population growth and the graph, so the curve has a characteristic shape, and with passing time we get a curve which is called as the population growth curve. There are basically two different forms which are identified. The first one is S and the second is J. S is known as sigmoid and the second is J, exponential type. We will further understand it. You can easily see and understand the image. S and J shaped curve. See the blue curve of J and also the S shape. I will explain both these graphs now. See, the horizontal line is indicating time and the vertical line is indicating population. It can be any population. Now S and J meaning we will understand further. When a small number of organisms first enter a previously unoccupied area, then the growth is slow at first as it adapts to new conditions and establishes itself. Then reproduction of all these organisms takes place after a certain period of time and we call it as leg phase. The natality rate increases while the mortality remains low. During this time, we call it as the growth phase. And after that, the another phase is when this part of population which was growing, the growth curve is called as stable phase, where the natality rate and the mortality rates are approximately equal. And the graph so obtained is S-shaped. And this S-shaped graph is also called as sigmoid curve. So that S-sigmoid word indicates that S-shaped graph because of its S-like structure. The full form of S is sigmoid curve. Now this is the last slide. S curve we have understood. Now we will understand the J curve. The J-shaped growth curve describes a situation in which the population growth continues in an exponential form until the environmental resistance become effective. As the environmental resistance becomes effective, then there is a stiff competition for survival. And then the growth rate stops abruptly. And then there is a sudden increase in mortality. You all must have remembered the image in which we had discussed speciation. So this is connected to that. Then the population crash occurs. So far, we have discussed the lesson. I hope you have understood the S-shaped curve and J-shaped curve. Hope it is clear. Thank you. Namaste.